Happy Thursday, everyone. What's going on? And welcome to your WWE Crown Jewel 2022 predictions. Crown Jewel, of course, comes to us very early on Saturday, 9 a.m. Pacific time for me. I got to get up and watch this shit on Saturday for the pay-per-view. And as promised, we are up here today to predict this whole thing. But we also have a lot of wrestling news going on as well. So I figured we would start with a little bit of a news brief and talk about some of the rumblings going on with Vince McMahon, CM Punk. A lot of news coming out of last night's Dynamite. And I thought we would shoot the shit about that a little bit before we got into these Crown Jewel predictions, because based on the card and the, I guess, 8 matches, I believe, that are advertised, I did not have to rack my brain too hard about who I'm going to predict to go over. There was only a couple of iffy ones there, and I figured we would probably blow through those predictions pretty quick, and I didn't want this to be a 10-minute long stream. So we are also going to get into some of the news that we got yesterday and the day before involving Vince McMahon and WWE's internal misconduct investigation into his affairs and his hush money payments and all that. That has officially come to an end, leading some to believe, based on some of the information talked about in the media call, or the earnings call the other day, that some kind of thought maybe Vince McMahon might be heading back to the company. We have some clarification on that, and we're probably going to read 2 or 3 Fightful Select articles on Vince, CM Punk, Colt Cabana, all that stuff going on in the last couple of days. So I thought we would talk a little bit about that, as well as maybe mention a little bit more about last night's Dynamite, because we did see Colt Cabana on the show. Jeff Jarrett made his All Elite Wrestling debut, and it was a pretty interesting show, even though it was kind of a lackluster one, and they were up against the World Series, which they did pull in a decent rating. Dynamite rating is in 911,000, which is right around what they're normally getting. They're usually in that million or just under it range. I always put them in like 850K to 1.1 million. It seems like they're always somewhere in there. So the fact that they still were able to keep this above 900,000 with the World Series on, pretty decent number, I think, especially since Dynamite last night was kind of a lackluster show overall. I still think we watched it last night together. I still think there was plenty on the show that we enjoyed and got a kick out of. But overall, it might have been a weaker Dynamite than we have seen. And that Marina Shafir Jade Cargill match was getting all sorts of heat because of the Nyla Rose stuff and what she did out there. And, there was a few critiques of the show last night. But overall, it wasn't a bad Dynamite, but definitely not a good one. And a lot of it just felt just a little iffy last night. So not the greatest show, but the fact that they held in there with that rating up against the World Series is pretty promising for them. So we'll be getting into that. We're going to be getting into a little bit of those security threats that we've been reading about in Saudi Arabia as well. A little bit worried about the WWE staff and talent over there, but as of right now, the show is supposed to go on, and we will see if it actually does happen on Saturday. I'm assuming it will, since the WWE crew is over there. Apparently everybody has made it to Saudi Arabia, and WWE is going to be holding a press conference over there, I think tomorrow. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what they have to say. But like I said, we'll be predicting that pay-per-view later on. We're going to open up here with the Vince stuff. Then we'll move into the CM Punk stuff, close out with the Colt Cabana, Jeff Jarrett shit from last night, and then we will predict Crown Jewel. That is what is on the menu this afternoon. Do me a favor, if you guys are here, please hit that thumbs up button for me. And if you're not a subscriber, please do that as well. And if you'd like to become a member, you can click the join button below, or the link in this video, in the description of this video, if you would like to join and become a member and support the channel even more. You've got a lot of me coming up. I thought maybe I would come up here tomorrow with a news stream, but I figured we would just lump it all in together today with the Crown Jewel prediction. So of course, nothing tomorrow then, but you will have me on Saturday, probably normal Winged Eagle time. I'm not going to be up here immediately after Crown Jewel. It's probably going to be like an hour or so after the show goes off the air. Then I will hit YouTube and give my review on that. And then on Sunday, we've got a really fun watch-along plan, Survivor Series 1998. It's a deadly game. We're going to be watching that together on Sunday. The links to both of these videos, Saturday's Crown Jewel review and Sunday's watch-along of Survivor Series 1998, both are in the description below, and they're up on my channel right now, so you can just go click those, save them, give them a like, and save them for the weekend. It's going to be a kick-ass effing time, you know what I mean? So anyway, let me cruise over here to the chat, say hello to those of you who might be here, because it is Thursday afternoon, really odd time for me to be coming up here and doing a stream, but here we are, so not sure what kind of an audience we're going to have, so every single like helps. Help me out. I want to say hello to Zane G. Well, let me hit the channel members first. Like Michael Cuomo chiming in with $2. 2 days in a row of good mic work. Yeah, and you're going to get 2 more in a row of me this weekend as well, Michael. As always, good to see you. As I said earlier, Zane G is in the house as well. Ronnie in the house. What's going on, buddy? We've got Chaz. We've got Zach Palgett. And we've got K Dogs Kennel and Red Raven Rucker and Financial Truth Academy rounding out some of the members in here right now. We also have David Hosier in the house, Ben Espinoza. We have Stephen Harris, JL, David Brown. Good to see you, my friend. And Big J is here as well. Alex Bryant, Beetle 911. And Andy Linnell, few of you guys starting to roll in here. And for those of you just joining us, like I said, we're going to get into a few wrestling news tidbits first, and then we will move in to the Crown Jewel 2022 predictions. And isn't it crazy that we have Logan Paul in the main event of a major pay-per-view, and Brock Lesnar is on the undercard? That is just blows my mind. Brock Lesnar is second fiddle to Logan fucking Paul. What kind of world are we living in here? But Crown Jewels are always weird, and yeah, Crown Jewel this year will probably be no exception. So we don't have a ton of time today. I got to wrap this podcast up, or this stream up, no later than 4:30 my time, which is about an hour and 20 minutes from now. So we got to wrap this up relatively quick. Can't talk all day because I got to get to work and do shit in my life too, you know what I mean? But anyway, let's start out with the Vince McMahon news. Now, it was reported on WWE's earnings call, which I have not really read much of those transcripts. I did not look a lot of those numbers, but I did hear the reports of the investigation, the internal investigation into Vince McMahon's misconduct and his sexual misconduct and whatnot has finally concluded. And I guess they said something in the earnings call that Vince is free to, you know, oversee company shit or whatever, leading some to speculate that maybe he could come back. Now, Fightful Select immediately dropped an article on this, kind of elaborating a little bit on Vince McMahon's status in the company, and they said this, and I quote, "The special investigation into Vince McMahon's alleged misconduct is complete within WWE." I don't think at this point it's alleged anymore. He did it. The company announced today that the special committee has been disbanded following the completion of the investigation. Mr. McMahon can quote, "Mr. McMahon can effectively exercise control over our affairs," end quote, was mentioned in the company's filing on Wednesday, which led some to believe that he could possibly head back to the company. One WWE spokesperson was contacted for comment and said that Vince McMahon was, quote, done, and would not be returning to the roles that were taken over by Triple H and several others. Beyond that, another WWE higher-up said that the morale in WWE over the last few months has been the highest they've seen in over a decade that they've been around. And that's just not with the talent. That's just in the company itself. You know, not having that cloud of an angry, crazy Vince McMahon hanging over you has got to be quite the relief. And the stress reliever as well. Article goes on to say another longtime WWE employee said that while they initially had reservations, hesitations, and fears regarding McMahon's departure and him possibly quickly coming back, that's no longer the case. They went as far as to say that everyone in charge realizes that would be a major step back for the company, and that today's filing instilled even more confidence in those that thought McMahon leaving would be a blow to the company. So to me, this was really kind of a non-story. And a lot of people, I was really surprised about the chatter like on Twitter yesterday that I was seeing. Everybody was talking about the Vince McMahon news, I don't believe that any of us were really truly expecting him back. Just because the investigation concludes doesn't mean he's been de-perverted. It doesn't mean his horniness goes away. Doesn't mean all these women that he's stuck his jackhammer inside of suddenly just evaporate into, into obscurity. These things happened. He did these things. It doesn't, just because the investigation is over doesn't mean, I can come back now. It's like if you're a murder investigation. Hey, we found the murderer. You can just go on with your job now that we found you. No, he still has to, pay the piper for this, so to speak. And I've never thought or believed that Vince McMahon would be able to come back based on the allegations that are coming to light. And now that the investigation is concluded and Vince retired and they've uncovered all these hush money payments, I don't know why anybody thought he would be allowed back after this when we've seen so many other CEOs and head of large companies and organizations be booted out for a hell of a lot less than Vince was. So the fact that Vince actually said goodbye and did it himself must have meant that he knew he was to the point of no return. Because Vince would sit there and fight like hell if he thought, he had a chance to, stay and remain in control of his company. So I've never believed, even for a second, that Vince was going to come back when all of this quote unquote blew over. The best thing in my mind Vince McMahon could ever hope for at this point was to go into the WWE Hall of Fame. A couple of weeks ago, I pitched the idea, I didn't say I was for it. I just pitched the idea of perhaps Vince McMahon maybe doing the intro for this year's, or for next year in 2023, Monday Night Raw's 30-year anniversary, which will be, it's going to be a Barclays show again or something like that, possibly some Manhattan Center stuff. And if they did even just an on-screen video of Vince going, welcome to Monday Night Raw, I was curious if how the public or the fans would accept that. And then when you think about the Hall of Fame, I do think the Hall of Fame is something that Vince probably needs to go into. I'm not going to lie. I think WrestleMania 40 is a better place for that in Philadelphia than this year at WrestleMania 39 in LA. But still, I feel like those are the things we could see Vince McMahon return to and make an appearance or have some sort of farewell goodbye before he dies. You know what I mean? But in terms of returning to the company to reassume his creative control is, to me, insane and would never do that. And at the end of the day, Vince McMahon, if he were to come back and take back all of the roles he had, take back head of creative from Triple H, become the CEO again, and basically just go back to being who he was, that would basically say and imply and prove that Vince McMahon cares a hell of a lot more about himself than he does about his company. And all we've ever heard Vince McMahon talk about in the years of interviews whenever he talks about his company, that he really does put WWE first. That is his baby. He wants to grow it as big and large as he can. And even a guy with an ego as large as Vince, he might be crazy, but I don't think he's Trump crazy to the point where he will put himself in charge knowing that that's going to destroy the very thing he's in charge of. I think Vince McMahon has to sit back and see the way the company has done since his departure, especially when you hear things about the morale, not only with the talent and the wrestlers, but also with just the employees and the staff and the crew in charge there. A lot of things have been going positively for WWE, to where if there was anybody that was worried that WWE was just going to full-blown collapse without Vince McMahon, those fears have been proven to be unfounded. I never thought that Vince McMahon leaving the company was going to harm them in any way. I knew that a lot of these creative handcuffs were going to be gone whenever he left, whether he was forced out, whether he died or whatever. Those were going to be problems that were going to be fixed just automatically when Vince left. So I think if Vince is sitting back, whatever he's been doing lately, going out to dinner with John Cena and Brock Lesnar or whatever, if he's sitting back watching his company on TV and he's hearing things about his company, he's probably hearing a hell of a lot of positive things. Who the hell is coming to Vince or texting Vince saying, boy, Vince, things sure went to shit since you left. We need you back. I don't think Vince has gotten that text message even once, except for maybe an ass kisser or two might be telling him that. But in terms of WWE and their success without Vince, they're proving that it can be done. Putting Vince back in there, what does that do? It's going to exactly what the WWE source told Fightful is that they would be taking a step back, because at some point in the future, Vince McMahon is going to have to step away from WWE because he's going to be too old or he is going to die. And he's already in his mid-70s, so if he comes back now, reassumes his role for another 5 or 7 years, and then dies, you murder all of your progress that you made. So when I was reading all of these Vince McMahon stories and comments and opinions and tweets yesterday, I was like, this is a non-story to me. It's a non-issue. I never believed for a second that Vince was coming back to the company. And I didn't believe once we got the story of the investigation concluding, I didn't believe he was coming back. If he still has some authority, which he does behind the scenes and in terms of the overall company, business side of things, that he can have a say in, whatever, do what you got to do there. Just keep Vince's craziness off of the on-screen product that we see. And now that we've seen Triple H take control of creative, we've seen a lot more continuity. We've seen a lot of great wrestlers who should have never been released to begin with being brought back. We've seen a lot of wrongs being righted, names being fixed, presentations being changed, and all of this stuff that WWE was doing to the talent, completely stripping them of what made them special to begin with. That stuff is slowly slowing down with Triple H. And now you're starting to see the reverse effect. So there's nothing that I can see as a fan looking at WWE that would make them better off with Vince instead. And that's why I just never thought Vince was going to be coming back. I never really took any stock in it to begin with, and I don't think a lot of people were either, but it did dominate quite a lot of chatter and discourse on social media yesterday about Vince McMahon. And I'm like, to me, it's just a non-issue. It's a dead issue. He's gone. He's gone, according to that one source, and he will not be back, at least in a creative role direction in WWE. He still might have some says here or there. We still might see him going to the Hall of Fame, possibly being referenced, maybe even an appearance in another year, because I just don't know if we want the very last image of Vince McMahon we ever see as him doing that weird jump off the ring steps. Or I think he came out on TV one time after that, but very kind of underwhelming end. He just kind of went out in a whimper. I think it would have been much better if his last act as any sort of WWE personality would have been taking that stunner from Stone Cold at WrestleMania, because that was gold. But the couple of appearances he made after that, to me just kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth. And I think at WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia, I think a Philly crowd might be a little bit more welcoming to Vince McMahon than an LA crowd. If he goes into the Hall of Fame, he's much more closer to home over there in Philly, and where his family promoted for so long there in the Northeast. I think that WrestleMania 40 is a nice round number. Philadelphia, close to home. What else more could you want when it comes to Vince McMahon? So I would keep him out of the Hall of Fame this year, but definitely put him in for WrestleMania 40, and that's as far as it goes in terms of any WWE involvement for Vince McMahon. For me as a fan, that's all I need. That's all I want. And stay the fuck away from WWE, Vince McMahon. Don't even think about coming back. And I don't think that he is. And that makes me happy. Let's move on to more controversial, fun stuff. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here with CM Punk. Now, there was some reports coming out on Wednesday prior to Dynamite, prior to Colt Cabana returning to AEW, or appearing, I should say, on AEW. And then we have a follow-up on that information as well. So we should start with some of the CM Punk rumors and rumblings and chatter that was going on yesterday. And the first one was about him being completely finished with wrestling. Now, Nick Hausman, who was a guest on Wrestling Observer Radio, of course, Nick is the guy that basically triggered the whole entire scrum meltdown. Are you friends with Colt Cabana? Nick Hausman was that guy that CM Punk started going off on and acting nuts. But he was also the guy who got a statement from CM Punk's side when they were talking about the dog Larry and stuff. So he was a guest on Wrestling Observer Radio, and he said that he's been hearing that CM Punk may be leaning towards walking away from wrestling for good. He's got a lot of other projects. There's that heel show that Stephen Amell does. He's way good on money. He doesn't need any money. And he's probably going to be negotiating some sort of an AEW buyout if that has not already happened. And there's really no financial reason for him to return to wrestling. So there is some speculation that maybe he could be walking away for good. Now, Fightful followed up on that yesterday, and I'm with an article. And the first few paragraphs of the article was mostly just recaps about what has happened since Brawl Out and what happened at Brawl Out. But it finishes up in the final paragraph by saying, and I quote, "One source close to CM Punk said they would not rule out him wrestling again, and they claimed he, quote, got the wrestling bug again," which I cannot wait to tear that apart. Goes on to say it was also stated that he's a long way from even being able to wrestle again due to his injury, and considering all the moving parts with his AEW status, they aren't sure if he'll still feel that way when things are done. The source indicated that it has been made clear to them at least that options will be available if and when Punk wants to wrestle again. Fightful did reach out to Punk directly for comment, but we have not heard back. So that got the wrestling bug shit again just cracked me up. What do you mean got the wrestling bug again? Is it the same bug that he got 14 months ago, 15 months ago when he returned last summer in 2021? Is that the bug? Or did the bug go away after Brawl Out and this is a completely new bug? Like, what is it? Like, what do you mean got the wrestling bug again? Fucker was gone for 8 years. For 8.5 years or 7.5 years, whatever it was. I figure once you got that bug back, then you're back. So you're telling me he got the bug, had the bug for a year, got over the bug, had the whole fallout at All Out and the Scrum Gate and the Brawl and that stuff. Bug is gone. Now the bug is miraculously back after 8 weeks. What the fuck? So get the bug again. Get the fuck out of here. I don't even know what that means. But whoever the source is weird. So basically it doesn't matter if it's a matter of if Punk feels like wrestling when he's able to, which is kind of what that implied here. Once he is able to work, once his injury is rehabbed and he's ready to go, there's going to be options available. So if he has the bug now, he might not necessarily have the bug when he heals up. Excuse me, belching on podcast. When he heals up from his injury, he might not have the bug then. So basically it revealed nothing, but it did say the CM Punk source said what we already know about CM Punk. It just depends on how he feels at the time. This guy does run very hot and cold. He changes his mind a lot, and what's a great idea to him one day is a terrible idea to him the next, and you never really know with Punk. But again, that would, much like the Vince stuff, none of that stuff was really surprising me. CM Punk, what happened with him in AEW, even if he was healthy right now, I just can't see any way he would be back, at least in the current, with the current information that we know. And we've seen the vignettes running for the Elite. We saw another one last night where they were deleting their trios championship victories, and the video editor kind of looking vibe to that vignette. And that kind of, to me, revealed a little bit more in terms of what Kenny and the Bucks are going to do when they come back. Because the first vignette that was showing them being erased, I'm like, well, fuck, that makes me think that when they come back, they're going to have something to say about that, about being erased. How dare you, or whatever. Maybe they're going to turn this into an angle. But then the vignette last night hinted more towards they just want the belts that were taken away from them back. They were erased. Their victories were erased. They were just removed from history like it was nothing. That is what the vibe of last night's vignette gave me. So that tells me, and we also saw a lot of footage of Death Triangle in there as well. So that tells me that when Kenny and the Bucks come back, probably this is not some sort of an angle of 3 jaded wrestlers coming back after having the deal with CM Punk, and they want revenge, or they're pissed, or whatever. They have some motivation there. I think it's basically them, the 3 of them, coming back to challenge Death Triangle and probably just win back the trios titles that they had to give up after All Out. So we've got a couple of weeks still until Full Gear. I think you could probably put that match together. I mean, how many more vignettes of this, of Kenny and the Bucks, can you run? Can you take these all the way into next year? I don't think so. You got a pay-per-view right there on the calendar. It would be a good way to just really almost finish the process of washing your hands of the whole situation. Pac, Penta, and Phoenix, in a lot of ways, probably have acted more as interim champions than anything else here. Even though Kenny and the Bucks were completely stripped, I feel like a placeholder is all Death Triangle is. And if Kenny and the Bucks come back, they challenge them at Full Gear, they win the titles back, and that feels like it's a cleansing. Like, okay, appreciate the help, Death Triangle, but this was the original plan. We're going to go back with them. The Punk stuff is done, and I'm sure Death Triangle will have no problem doing the honors for those boys when they come back. So I would put that match as soon as possible at Full Gear, and maybe we might even see Kenny and the Bucks in person on Dynamite as early as next week, which would be great if that was the case. So based on the fact that we know that the Elite and the Bucks are coming back, and the more and more reports we hear from sides and locker room talent, and it really does seem like it's very, very heavy anti-Punk on the AEW side. A lot of talent was very happy to see Colt Cabana come back last night, as we will talk about here in a second. But in terms of that CM Punk news and him leaning towards walking away for good, I kind of feel like that is what Punk needs to do and what Punk probably wants to do. I mean, if I'm Punk, I'm sitting there saying, I just cannot get along with everybody. I hate WWE. I could not imagine going back there. I'm sitting on millions of dollars. It's not like I need the money. So why am I going to go sign with WWE just for the same hassles and the same headaches that I have in any locker room, because I have a track record of this. And WWE now, based on, Colt Cabana showing up on the show last night and them monitoring this situation, it might not be something Triple H even wants to mess with. I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. With WrestleMania on the horizon, you got names. The Rock's probably going to come back at some point and work with Roman Reigns. You got Cody there. You got Logan Paul. You got Brock Lesnar running around. You got plenty of names, plenty of guys, and plenty of name value, internet breaking type of names already. Yes, if you brought CM Punk in, that would be a big deal. But if CM Punk returned at WrestleMania or something, I feel like he'd be overshadowed by a hell of a lot, more talent. And I think he adds more value to AEW's roster than he would WWE. Not that he wouldn't add value to WWE. He would melt Twitter if he showed up. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, like we've talked about at length for the past 2 months on this channel, is it worth the risk and the hassle in the long run? My personal opinion is no. Some of your personal opinions might be yes, but it would really have to be the right situation. All the stars would have to align perfectly to where not only is it going to be an industry-changing type of deal, but there's like no way you can fuck it up. Punk is happy, or he's not going to get pissed, or there's going to be no bad feelings, or nothing's going to get screwed up. Like everything just aligns where you know 1,000% that it's going to be perfect. That's the only way I'm even considering bringing in Phil. And like I said, dropping a spoon into that garbage disposal, because that's what his presence is. Now, that was all prior to Dynamite. Last night on Dynamite, of course, along with the Kenny and the Young Bucks vignette, their video package kind of teasing their return, likely going to be targeting the Death Triangle and winning back their trios titles, Chris Jericho also had a open challenge last night on Dynamite that was advertised for a full week. I would have preferred if they made this maybe not like an open challenge, but just had a mystery opponent for him. Like if they had the opponent predetermined, because when you have an open challenge, obviously it's only open to former Ring of Honor title holders, but there sure is a lot of them in AEW right now. And like I've said before, with every open challenge, I don't understand why you don't have a situation backstage where wrestlers are trampling each other, fighting, trying to get to Gorilla, trying to get out to the curtain, trying to get out to that ring first. Think about how hard people fight in Royal Rumbles, in Money in the Bank matches, in number one contender matches. People fight and bleed and risk their careers just to get an opportunity for a title shot. And now you have one that you can just take without even breaking a sweat, and you're back there eating a cheeseburger. What the fuck are you doing? Same thing with Natalya the other night on SmackDown with that open challenge shit. When Emma came back, and then Natalya backstage, who was in full gear and dressed to go, tells Ronda, if it would have been me, I would have beat you. I'm like, well, why wasn't it you? What were you doing? What were you doing? So get your ass out there. So the open challenge stuff bothers me a little bit because it's been so long. It's been like 7 days. And you would think you would be Ring of Honor champions going crazy, texting, tweeting, trying to contact Tony Khan. I want this match. I want this match. I want this match. Why does it have to be revealed? And at the very end, it just doesn't make any sense. But I was willing to bypass all of that nonsense because of who the opponent was. Jericho comes out to the ring, and he goes, okay, here we go. Who's it gonna be? And it turns out to be, boom, boom, Colt Cabana comes out. Very big surprise. I loved it. To me, that sent a very clear message. Message received, Tony Khan. I got it. And to see the look on Colt Cabana's face, it was just written all over his face. It was a very big moment for him. It was a very big deal for him. I've been wondering all along how he's felt during all of this, to have his name tossed around, to be one of the reasons, even though kind of indirectly, to be one of the reasons that all of this exploded the way it did after Brawl Out. I'm like, fuck, I wasn't even there. And, he goes off on me and talks about me and my mother in front of everybody. That to me, that was so much unprofessionalism coming from Punk. Shares a checking account with his mom and shit. Like, fuck you, dude. God, not all of us can make $20 million a year. So, like that type of stuff, I've been wondering about Colt's demeanor, because I've never met Colt. Many of you maybe have. I've never have. But from what we've always heard, Colt Cabana is a really well-liked guy. We don't hear stories about a bad reputation from him, or walking around being an asshole, or rubbing people the wrong way, or screwing people over. If these are things we've heard about Colt Cabana before, maybe that's one thing, but everything is just so one-sided. CM Punk just views this guy as the devil, just like he does Hangman Page, and Colt Cabana are adored amongst a lot of friends, or a lot of fans and their peers. So, what isn't adding up here? Something's not adding up. So I've always wondered that about Colt Cabana. And when you could see the emotion on his face when he was coming out last night, I really liked to see that. You could tell that meant a lot to him. So just seeing him come out was like, wow, that was a pretty clear message. Trent Beretta tweets out, "For the boys," all capital letters. I can only imagine that there's a lot of AEW talent that feels that way, because Colt Cabana's appearance, doesn't matter if the match was good or what he did in the match, that's beside the point. Him just appearing them bringing him out to wrestle Jericho. Now, my suspicion is that this was all Jericho's idea. Jericho is the one that pitched this. Tony Khan said, oh my God, that's a fucking great idea. $100, this was Jericho's idea, because Jericho also, I think, has a lot of personal animosity with CM Punk right now based on everything that happened. And that could be, and of what we heard about Jericho saying to Punk after Brawl Out. So, this had to feel very good for Jericho as well. So seeing Colt Cabana come out, that emotion on his face, seeing AEW say, we are done with Punk, we are moving forward, the Elite are back, here's Colt Cabana, if that doesn't, and I mentioned that last night in the watch along, I said, or in the live reaction, I said, what's cool about AEW is that they probably are, all parties involved here probably are in a situation where they cannot talk about this, but you can still speak with your actions. And to me, Colt Cabana having a match on Dynamite last night spoke volumes to where AEW is at, where their head's at. Everything is matching up. All these reports we've heard, the investigation's coming to an end, CM Punk, Ace Steel, released, CM Punk buyout, imminent, the Elite are coming back, Colt Cabana's appearing. That, to me, that paints a pretty clear picture of what the investigation concluded and what the conclusion of all of this is going to be. I think the only thing that might be hanging on over AEW's head for a while is finishing up whatever they're going to do with CM Punk business and contractual wise. But with the Elite on their way back, if Kenny and the Bucks do show back up on Dynamite next week, challenge Death Triangle at Full Gear, and win the titles back, to me, that's almost closure. Then all we're waiting for is the report to start circulating online, or perhaps even a statement from AEW that all contractual liabilities and obligations to CM Punk have been concluded, and these guys are, done with each other and moving on. And hopefully that can be achieved before we head into 2023 and we can get a nice, fresh, clean slate for AEW. That would be fantastic. So great to see Colt Cabana on Dynamite last night, although I will say his match with Jericho was not very good. Couple of botches there. One where they kind of fell off the top rope, looked really bad. If there was no CM Punk connection here and this was just Colt Cabana or anybody else coming in challenging Jericho, I probably would look at this match as a letdown. I would. But I really like Colt Cabana. I really like that they did this match. I didn't think the match was all bad. Jericho won with a code breaker, by the way. I don't know when the last time he won a match with a code breaker was. But just to see that match happened, some fans were complaining, oh, Colt Cabana took a spot from somebody else. Who fucking cares, man? Let's worry about that another week. To me, this was AEW sending a strong message on where they stand in terms of CM Punk, and to me, that was telling. To me, that gave us information without really coming out and saying it. So that's why I really, really enjoyed that. So anyway, Colt Cabana, hopefully we will see more of you. And apparently he has been in the fold a little bit behind the scenes, because Fightful Select dropped a report about 2 hours ago that I want to read to you. And this is regarding the Colt Cabana appearance last night in AEW. And the report says, and I quote, "It probably doesn't come as a surprise based on the social media reaction, but several within All Elite Wrestling are happy that Colt Cabana is back. The dozen or so talent that Fightful heard back from regarding the November 2nd AEW Dynamite were in support of Colt Cabana being back in the fold. There was natural inquisition as to it possibly reinforcing the long-standing rumor that Cabana was removed from television because of CM Punk, whether that was directly requested by Punk or not, which Punk vehemently denied. Before Cabana's absence, we're told that he'd seemed incredibly happy and had been helping produce matches for months before he left. WrestleVotes tweeted on November 3rd today that Colt Cabana showing up on Dynamite last night didn't go unnoticed in Stamford. That's all I'll say on it right now." End quote. Those that we spoke to were saying that that seemed like a huge signal to WWE that if CM Punk wasn't finished with AEW before, he would be now. One source within WWE that was familiar with both Punk and Cabana said they'd be shocked if the two could ever work together again. A WWE source said they haven't heard anything resembling an update on the relationship between Punk and WWE, and that they wouldn't feel comfortable officially reaching out to him considering the situation. Fightful asked AEW if Cabana is back on a permanent basis and if he'll return, and we haven't heard back as of yet. So the Colt Cabana's return not going unnoticed in Stamford, I don't really think that's much of a story either. I don't think that there's a whole bunch of people in Stamford talking about Colt Cabana. I just think people in WWE got the same message that we all did. I think the WrestleVotes sometimes can drop some major news, but that to me is duh. I bet you Stamford did notice that. I'd be disappointed in WWE if they didn't notice what AEW was trying to tell them there. And if AEW is willing to wash their hands of CM Punk completely, so much so that they will bring back the very guy that set Punk off to begin with as a statement and a message to say, we are done, we are moving on, then that should be message received by WWE. Because like I said earlier, I think CM Punk offers more value to AEW than he does to WWE. So if AEW is willing to cast off their biggest star for the good of the company, then what good is it? What good would it do for WWE to bring him in? He's not going to be their biggest star. So, he has less value there. So there's just so many things you have to think about. I'm not saying CM Punk coming into WWE is impossible. Nothing is impossible. We're sitting here in the same year that Vince McMahon walked away from his company. Nothing's impossible, but I think it's unlikely. And I think it would take a pretty incredible change in attitude or perception from one or both sides to work with each other again. And it would also take an incredible amount of cooperation. And no matter how happy Punk might seem at first, we've seen how quickly that can change. Punk didn't even seem like the same person when he came to AEW last year after all that time off. I remember talking about that when he made his return. We talked about it. Wow, he seems refreshed. All of those old nagging frustrations that he has have to be completely washed away by now. He's clean slate. He's happy. He's energetic. He's healthy. He's enthusiastic. He's motivated. And then what? 13 months later, he's eating a muffin saying, I'm old, I'm fucking tired, and I work with children. What the hell happened? So I wouldn't trust anything. If you sit down with CM Punk and have the best meeting possible, and you get a lot of things accomplished and you make some headway and you got a good feeling about it, the dude could turn right around and have the complete opposite opinion tomorrow. So I wouldn't even trust that if I were to sit down and have a talk with Punk and say, oh, that went well. Well, shit looked like it was going well in AEW as well. And then, fast forward 1 year and it's, one of the biggest stories and implosions that we've ever seen in wrestling since the Screwjob, which is coming up, 25-year anniversary of. By the way, Screwjob video premiering Wednesday, November 9th on the channel prior to Dynamite. Keep that in mind. We're going to talk about the Screwjob again next week. But this is the biggest story to happen since then. So, who knows what Punk's demeanor would be from one meeting to the next. And if time goes by, he is just he has a personality that just seems very difficult to survive in a pro wrestling locker room environment. And I don't know if you're a big major company like WWE or AEW, if you want that in your locker room. I don't think New Japan is the place for him either, to be honest. I don't think anybody in New Japan is going to put up with his shit there. So in WWE, kind of same thing. I just think that, maybe that locker room, there will be a few more people that might get in his face than would in AEW. Punk tries to pull that shit around Brock or Bobby Lashley, Punk is going to have a problem. So I don't know. I'm sure Punk would be all humble if he came to WWE. Oh, yes, Mr. Lesnar. Yes, Mr. Lashley. I could never imagine Punk going on a media scrum or a press conference and talking about Lashley and Brock the way he talked about Hangman and the Bucks. Brock, that empty-headed fuck. Oh, man, CM Punk would have no head if he called Brock an empty-headed fuck. So the whole situation is just a mess. It's crazy. But last night, Colt Cabana coming back to me was very telling, and it spoke volumes to where AEW is at and where they're looking to go. And to me, that's a positive thing. Even though at the end of the day, this whole situation is still very, very sad. Also, last night on Dynamite, we had the debut of Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett is All Elite. He came out at the end of the Darby Allin and Jay Lethal match after they had already had a fake Sting come out, who I believe was Cole, was he 2 dimes or whatever? Jeff Jarrett broke a guitar, didn't draw 2 dimes. First, they have him come out. Cole, what's his name? Coleslaw? I forgot his name. So Coleslaw comes out, removes the Sting mask, and everybody was like, who the fuck is he? I didn't even know. I'm like, is he that NXT guy? And I think you guys were like, yeah, that's him. And then right after that, as they're powdering out or whatever, Darby is standing in the ring, and from behind, in comes Jeff Jarrett, dressed all in black, wearing a cowboy hat. Darby turns around, eats the guitar, smashes the guitar all over Darby's head. Darby's laying there in a pool of blood, busted the back of his head open. So Jarrett basically stiffed poor Darby on his debut, and this is exactly how he debuted on TNT in 1999, the night after No Mercy, which we're probably coming up on the 23-year anniversary. We just passed it. We just passed the 23-year anniversary of this happening. Of course, he lost to China. The very next night, he showed up on Nitro and bashed Buff Bagwell over the head with a guitar, remember? And then he cut a promo. Same thing in WWE 2 years earlier. He didn't hit anybody with a guitar, but he came in and cut a shoot promo in 97. Came in WCW, cut a shoot promo in 99. And here we are in AEW all these years later in 2022. Does the same thing again. Guitar shot to the head of a guy that wasn't even born the last time he debuted on TNT, and then cuts yet another shoot promo talking about the history of his family. Looks like he might even sort of be assuming maybe a Dan Lambert role, because he was kind of giving shit to the AEW audience and what a bunch of morons they are or whatever. And he told Darby Allin that he just received a lesson from the last outlaw or something. So I don't know if he's going to be forming a faction or whatnot. But as soon as I saw him on Dynamite last night, what was I saying during the live reaction? I said, this is a guy that was just released by WWE when Triple H took over, because he replaced Jeff Jarrett with Road Dogg. But Jeff Jarrett is a guy that had a front office job in WWE just a matter of weeks ago. I'm sure Tony Khan would find a similar role for him behind the scenes to maybe sometimes use on TV. I did not believe for 1 second that Jeff Jarrett came into the company as a talent and a talent only. I said that immediately from the minute his feet hit that ring last night. I'm like, oh, he must be an agent or been hired as some sort of backstage guy. I just don't think that he's necessary. I don't think just Jeff Jarrett is a talent and a talent only is necessary. I like seeing the legends there. I like the Tazes. I like the Regals. I like the Jakes. What the fuck is Jake anyway? I like those guys. I like the Stings, and even some that wrestle a little bit, like Sting and Jericho. And I don't have any problem with Jarrett being there on the surface per se, provided he also has something else to do in the company, which he does. Tony Khan tweeted out a couple hours after Dynamite went off the air, "Welcome to AEW and new Director of Business Development, Jeff Jarrett." So he's the new Director of Business Development. Tweet went on to talk about increasing the live events in 2023, which Jarrett will also have a role in that, because I do think he was in charge of live events or something like that in WWE, right? And the only reason Jarrett is not in WWE right now is because of what happened to Vince McMahon. So I saw a lot of it, and I'm no Jarrett fan. I can't believe I'm defending Jeff Jarrett here, but I saw a lot of complaining about that on Twitter, like, oh, another guy to take up spots. I'm like, I don't know if he's necessarily there to take up too much TV time. I think he's there to be on TV sometimes, but also have a backstage role as well, which he was just doing in WWE. Nobody's criticizing WWE for having Jarrett in that role, so I don't know why AEW is. And having, yet another legend on TV, which to Jarrett's credit, even though he's an old man, he's in pretty decent shape there. I think he's something like 5 years sober now, which is great. I don't need Jeff Jarrett personally. I would have been perfectly fine if Jeff Jarrett never turned up in AEW. He's not somebody I need to see or want to see or necessarily pay money to see, but he's not necessarily somebody I hate either. And bringing him in, provided he had a backstage role, I was perfectly fine with, and I made that clear last night. So the fact that he does have a behind-the-scenes role and job in the company, and he might be used on TV occasionally, or he might start building some sort of a faction or a group here. He even dropped some impact. He even said the word impact in his promo. My family made an impact. He even had his TNA music, didn't he? Maybe he owns that. I don't know how they were able to use that. A lot of people were like, oh, I miss his TNA music is awesome. That I don't like it. I don't like it personally, but a lot of people do. Brings back memories for a lot of people. So to see him come out to that was all very cool. And it is, kind of weird to watch that 23 years later when he basically did the same thing on the other network for WCW back in 1999. And to me, that always is a little bit intriguing. And now Jeff Jarrett is all elite. So do we need Jeff Jarrett in AEW? No. Is it the worst thing in the world? Is it going to take up way too much TV time from a bunch of talent and it's going to be a disaster? Also, no. I don't see that happening. I don't think it's really that big of a deal at all. And Jeff Jarrett is now all elite, and we're just going to have to live with that. GCW. Streaming now on Fight TV. Fight has really been loading up with some good independent wrestling on that platform. $4.99 a month will get you every GCW show and their tape library, which is a pretty damn good deal, especially if you are into indie wrestling. Now, I've only seen bits and pieces of GCW. Some of the matches, I know they've had a lot of people working for them, and they've ran some big shows, and I know Brett Lauderdale has got some connections and whatnot, but I wouldn't go as far as saying I'm a big GCW fan or anything, but I still think that's great news. And if you're a wrestling fan that likes to try to follow as much stuff as you can, you are literally living in the best time in the history of the universe to do that. Couldn't do this. I couldn't just go on a fucking computer and look at All Japan and New Japan and ECW and WCW and Smoky Mountain and all this stuff when I was a kid. I couldn't do any of that. So the fact that this shit is accessible to wrestling fans who like wrestling and want to consume as much of wrestling as they can, this is excellent news. And if you're a wrestling fan, it's just a good time in history to be one. That's all I'm going to say. Despite the asshole-ish, insecure, and petulant behavior that we see constantly online. Despite all that, it's still a pretty good day to be a wrestling fan and a good time. Thank you for that tweet, Nicholas, over there on YouTube. I don't really like my face, but I will retweet that. If any of you guys ever put up screenshots of you watching this stream, it will get an automatic retweet. And let me see if there's anything else I need to ask you guys before we move on. All right, let me knock out these super chats, and then we are going to move in to Crown Jewel predictions. Oh, in 1 second, though, I do want to mention, have you guys seen the picture today of Becky Lynch? Becky Lynch got cast as Cyndi Lauper in the new season of Young Rock, which I guess is debuting soon. And there's a photo of her dressed as Cyndi Lauper. She looks pretty good. I think Becky could pull off Cyndi Lauper. So that means if she's playing Cyndi Lauper, I've never seen Young Rock. I've only seen clips online. Never seen an episode of it. So if she's playing Cyndi Lauper, that means that Young Rock must be up to 1985 now, or 1984, or 84 or 85. Probably around WrestleMania 1 is where Rocky has got to be. So he is, I don't know, still 10, 11 years away from debuting in WWE, if that's where they're at. But I thought they had made it further than that. I thought there was already guys playing Stone Cold Steve Austin and stuff in the locker room. So I don't know how that show goes or how the timeline works. But if Becky is there playing Cyndi Lauper, maybe it's a flashback to Rock remembering some shit from 1985. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's a flashback. But I did see, guys like Iron Sheik and guys playing Stone Cold and stuff. But I don't know. If you're a watcher of the show, you can let me know. But I thought that was cool that Lynch was cast as Cyndi Lauper, and the picture looked great. She looked just like her. So good for Becky. Will be interesting to see her role in that. Yeah. Let's cruise to the chat, knock out, I think, just one super chat we have coming in, and then we're getting into Crown Jewel. Young Rock is tomorrow night. Okay. Okay, there. He's actually in WWF in 96. Yeah, because I knew I saw guys like the 96 crew. I know Austin, and maybe there's somebody playing Goldust or something. So I know I've seen clips of that, or at least photos of that. So I know they've made it up to his debut in WWE. Can't believe I haven't watched that show. I should. Zane G, I want to thank you for that $5 earlier on, my friend. I know that this doesn't mean anything, but WWE has been holding Raw in Dallas, Texas on more than one, including 3 nights ago. Holding Raw in Dallas on more than one night, including 3 nights ago. I'm not sure what that, you mean Raw in Dallas like per year? I'm not sure what that's referencing. Oh, man, it might be something I was referencing earlier. I'm sorry, Zane. Sometimes if you comment on something I'm talking about and then I read it like 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, I forgot what the fuck I was even saying. But thank you very much for that, Zane. If you have some clarification on that later on, feel free. Nick Musser, good to see you. I'm not sure if I got you earlier. Zach Palgett and Mab all in the house. Welcome all the new channel members rolling in here. Victor Colon, everybody else chiming in on this nice Thursday afternoon. Thank you for being here. Wasn't sure if we'd have any audience at all in the middle of a random-ass Thursday, but here you guys are, and I appreciate it. Subscribe, thumbs up, all that good stuff. Don't forget Saturday, Crown Jewel Review. Sunday, Survivor Series 1998 watch-along. That's going to be fun, and the links are in the description. So go down there and do it. Yeah, so it's probably, sometimes Rock talks about his childhood, so it's probably like a flashback sequence or something like that is what that is. And one day I'll probably just, me and Elizabeth, we'll binge watch Young Rocks one of these days. It'll be fun. Victor Colon, do you think WWE should have canceled Crown Jewel because of what is going on? I'm probably the wrong person to even ask that, but that was the last thing we are going to talk about, and that is right before the WWE crew was set to head over to Saudi Arabia. I think the day before, the United States received intelligence from Saudi Arabia about an imminent attack coming from Iran. This is apparently a pretty credible intelligence threat, leading a lot of people to wonder about the status of Crown Jewel. Now, we kept looking for updates. WWE wasn't hinting at any sort of cancellations or anything like that. This is such a sketchy fucking situation. I hate that they have this deal over there because we already saw this a couple of years ago with that journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, who was murdered by the Saudi prince, and WWE still did business there, but they really kind of toned back the Saudi Arabia mentions and stuff, and they basically just let it blow over. Could you imagine that? Chopping off the head, arms, and legs of a journalist can just blow over if you're WWE. So now they've started to go back there, talking all about Saudi Arabia again, even though all this sketchy stuff. And from, in terms of politically, Saudi Arabia is an ally of the United States, but that doesn't mean that threats don't exist there. They definitely do. And it was already a real sketchy situation a couple of years ago when they all got stranded there and they couldn't get home. Remember Brody Lee sitting there? The fear, the frustration and fury on his face was like nothing I've ever seen. And I don't want to see the talent or the crew be stuck over there in that situation. Now, they know a lot more than we do. It's easy to sit here and say, oh, they should just cancel the show. I mean, I'm sure they've done their due diligence. I'm sure they have spoke to who they needed to speak to, or U.S. officials or security or whatever, to ensure that, because if this is a military threat, if attacks are planned by Iran on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I would assume these are more like military strikes. They're not looking to bomb and kill, 20,000 kids. I don't think that's their motivations. At least that's kind of what I'm guessing. But still, if there's any sort of threats of violence at all, threats of war, terrorism, violence, or anything so far away from home, I wouldn't want to go there. I wish I could be a WWE wrestler just so I could say, I'm not going to Saudi Arabia. I would Rob Van Dam that shit. I will not go. You can fire me if you want. I'm not going. And, we already see Sami Zayn's not even allowed to go to these fucking things. And I think Kevin Owens stays behind out of solidarity to Sami. And I don't like the Saudi shows. They're sketchy. This blood money bullshit, how much money is involved here that can actually potentially have you put your crew in danger. But I think, WWE probably is taking the necessary precautions. If they were told, hey, it's not safe, I don't believe they will go. I understand that WWE, puts money above everything else, and this is a really disgusting relationship they have with Saudi Arabia. But I also truly believe that if there was some sort of true, credible, real threat where, hey, if you go here, there's a 50% chance you're going to die, they would not go. I think that, they've received the information and intelligence on their end. They've weighed the possibilities, and they've decided that they should go and do the show. But it's still very nerve-wracking when you read things like this and you hear things like this, that there are imminent attacks planned on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and you're just going to take a chance that it's not at the Coliseum where Crown Jewel is being played. That's awfully shady and sketchy, and I just hope everything goes well. I hope they don't have to, if they had to cancel the show and head back, I'm fine with that. I just want everybody back here on U.S. soil safe. I don't give a fuck if you have the show or you don't have a show. Just get back here safe, because this whole situation is gross, and what sucks is when this whole 5-year deal or whatever it was is over, they're probably just going to re-sign another one with them, and we're going to be dealing with these Saudi Arabia shows forever because they bring in too much money. They produce so much of WWE's, bottom line profits. It's ridiculous how much money they're getting paid by this country to basically this kingdom to just go over there and throw a show at them. And at first, that's what they were doing, if you remember, right? Remember all those dumb little shows they were doing, the Greatest Royal Rumble and the Green Belt and Titus O'Neil falling and that big sumo wrestler because the prince wanted Yokozuna and shit like that. They just seemed clueless over there. So WWE was like, all we got to do is give them a house show with WrestleMania Pyro. That's all we need to do. And that's all they should do. Just go over there, give them a house show with WrestleMania Pyro and get the fuck home. But then I think they started realizing that that's what WWE was doing, and that's when you started seeing title changes happen over there and shit like that. So I don't know. It's whack, but Crown Jewel is this Saturday as of right now. It is still scheduled to go on. If they get any sort of terroristic threat or anything like that prior to the show, they'll probably cancel it or postpone it or something, and everybody will come back. But if the show goes off without a hitch, this is how I have it predicted. So get ready. By the way, Zane G, you didn't have to chime in for 10 more just to tell me that. You could just told me in the chat, but thank you for that, my friend. Sorry about that. Have you checked out the Tales of the Territory doc? Since Jarrett is a part of the show, would AEW pull him off the show since it's partially WWE heavy? I don't think so. I don't think, plus a lot of those have already been recorded. So I think they're already canned, and I've watched all of them. I think there was a new one that came out on Tuesday that I have not seen, Calgary. I've not seen Stampede, but I've watched Andy Kaufman, AWA, and Florida. I've watched all those episodes. I really like the Tales from the Territory shows. It's great. And I don't think Jarrett's appearing on that show would really affect anything. I don't think WWE would lean on them to pull him because all the episodes that he's going to be a part of has already been recorded, unless they do a second season of this and they want to bring back Jarrett in for that. So maybe if they do a season 2 of the Territories, then if they don't talk anything about Memphis or they have no reason to bring Jarrett there, then that's fine. But if they have a subject where that Jarrett was involved in, but Jarrett's not there, then you could be right. But I don't think they're going to be pulling him off because anything he's already done has already been recorded on that, Zane. But thank you very much for that. Also, thank you to Spaz Phoenix, who's chiming in with the $20 drop. Hey, Greg in chat. Cheap plug. WWE last week went up Monday. NXT Review went up Tuesday. Crown Jewel preview will go up tomorrow and sometime over the weekend. Look out for the ever-changing landscape of WWE PPVs. PLEs nowadays, my God. But yeah, go show Spaz some love, subscribe to his channel, and check out all of his videos coming to his channel this week. He's just like me. I got a ton of videos up as well. 4 or 5 links I had posted ready to rock this week. So that just leaves us with Crown Jewel. We need to get into that now. It is time to predict WWE Crown Jewel from Saudi Arabia. I have to wake up at 9 a.m. local time to see this thing on Saturday if I want to, and I don't want to. I don't want to do that, but I'm gonna do it for you guys, and we'll be up here later on in the day, probably around the same time that the normal Winged Eagle podcast goes up. Actually, it is the same time. I already have it planned for 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. I might be up here an hour earlier depending on when the show ends and all of that, but keep that in mind for Saturday that it's probably going to be like Winged Eagle time. That's when you're going to get me for the pay-per-view, just so I have enough time to gather my notes and gather my thoughts and get the bloodshot out of my eye and wake up and have a cheeseburger, that kind of thing. So keep a lookout for that on Saturday. It should be fun to discuss this crazy card and this crazy main event. My God. Anyway, let's start at the bottom of the card. Crown Jewel, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 matches according to WWE.com. SmackDown tomorrow is a taped show. I have read the results and the spoilers on that show. It looks fine. It's probably a missable show. And I also think it's going to be on FS1. Which is going to drastically hurt the rating. As a matter of fact, I think Dynamite got a bigger rating this week than SmackDown got last week, but SmackDown wasn't even on their normal network, and that's the way it goes. And that'll probably be the case maybe Friday, unless the World Series rain delay fucked everything up. Maybe they're not playing. I don't know. Anyway, here's what we got for Crown Jewel. OC versus Judgment Day. You know, I know Gallows and Anderson just came back in and everything, but I kind of feel like the Judgment Day needs to win this. I think they need to win here, probably with help from Rhea Ripley again or something. And then on Monday, we will find out who the OC has to combat Ripley. They've been teasing somebody, coming in to even the odds. A lot of people thought it might be Charlotte or whatever. But in terms of this match, unless this woman shows up here, unless Edge and Beth have made the trip and Beth Phoenix hops over the barricade because she has unfinished business with Rhea Ripley as well. And if Beth Phoenix hops the barricade and attacks Rhea Ripley, maybe that could happen to help offset the match there, and then OC gets the win. But in terms of Saturday, I'm going to go with Judgment Day to get the victory in that match. Braun Strowman versus Omos, 60-minute Iron Man match. Man, I hope this thing goes to sudden death because these guys are going to put on a clinic. I really hope they wrestle for 60 minutes and there's no falls and then it goes into sudden death, and then maybe Omos catches Strowman with a late super kick or something and pins him. That would be great. No, I'm kidding. This is not going to be an Iron Man match. This is going to be Greg, don't throw yourself out the window match. And I don't see any way that Omos wins this. I think now that Strowman is back, Omos has been around for a while now. He's big, he's bad, he's awesome, but he's not that physically impressive in the ring. Braun Strowman has a lot more history in WWE, probably a little bit more, I guess, a little better big man. And probably in the future, a much more credible opponent for Roman Reigns, which would also be interesting because when they had their whole thing all those years ago when Strowman he was owning Roman for a while there. Some of their brawls and some of the matches they were having were great. but Roman was the babyface and Strowman was the heel, but the crowd was very pro-Strowman because back in those days they were very anti-Roman. So to see these two guys come together again in the future here and Strowman challenging Roman as a babyface now is going to be really interesting if that ever happens. And I think Strowman beating Omos is definitely going to have to be the end result there, because I think Strowman might be built for Roman at some point in 2023. I also think we could probably see this match ran back. I feel like Strowman would win here, but then maybe Omos wins some bullshit rematch on Raw the following Monday or something. I don't know. But in terms of this match, I feel like it's got to be Braun Strowman all the way here, defeating Omos. Drew McIntyre taking on Karrion Kross in a steel cage. Drew. Got to go Drew here. Drew needs this win back. At Clash at the Castle, Karrion Kross needed to be the person. He needed to have that win. He just came back. I don't think Karrion Kross is the main event player Triple H thinks he is. And I think Triple H is going to come to that realization himself. I would love to see Kross shave his head again. The cage match here stipulation is because Karrion Kross can't seem to win any matches with Scarlett. I like Scarlett there as a heater. They're a great pair. They should have never split them up to begin with. But I also think they take it overboard where they're telling you the story that Karrion cannot beat anybody without her help. And I think, he's a more menacing and dominant figure, who can impose his will on people. He's a big, bad, rough and tough fighter. I don't think he should have to rely on his wife for every match, maybe just some of his matches, when he's, in an uphill battle or something like that. So now you've got the cage match. I don't see how Karrion Kross is going to come out of this victorious, at least clean, unless he has some crazy trick up his sleeve and he's able to beat Drew McIntyre. I could see that happening. Maybe Scarlett. Another thing you got to remember, Scarlett is not going to be able to dress very scarlet-y in Saudi Arabia, if you know what I mean. So unfortunately, she's going to be a very more reserved Scarlett, but they might play a magic trick on us, They might do something with the lights or some smoke or come up through the ring or something to gain an advantage on McIntyre and allow Karrion Kross to get the win, but I don't see it happening. I'm going to have Drew McIntyre go over and win the cage match against Karrion. After what happened to Drew McIntyre at Clash at the Castle, he needs a win. If he were to lose here to Karrion Kross and then sing karaoke, Greg's going to have to quit watching wrestling. We have a new women's tag team title match that was added after this past Monday night when Alexa and Asuka beat Dakota Kai and Io Sky for the for the women's tag team championships. And we are going to get that match ran back at the pay-per-view. Asuka and Alexa defending against Dakota and Io. This is just a rematch for the sake of a rematch. This is a Vince type of booking where you see the title change happen and then you just immediately do the rematch. Why would you put the belts on Alexa and Asuka just to take them off again 5 days later? Of course, Alexa and Asuka are going to retain here. And then maybe on Raw or next week, we can start talking all about Sasha Banks and Naomi again. In terms of Sasha and Naomi or both showing up at Crown Jewel, I say definitely not. There would be no way that they would be able to go unnoticed in Saudi Arabia. If they made the trip with the WWE crew, they would be seen and it would be leaked. So there's no way to hide them. It's not like they can take a bus there and just stay on the bus the whole time. They're in Saudi Arabia. You got to be on a plane, got to be in airports, you got to be seen. There's no way around that. So no Sasha Banks at the Crown Jewel pay-per-view, I don't believe. And we also have the WWE Tag Team titles currently unified and held by the Usos. They're about to break the New Day's record and Demolition's record. So the Usos are about to break the longest running WWE Tag Team Champions of all time record. And that's pretty awesome. And I don't think they are going to lose them here just a few days ahead of their record-tying or record-breaking championship run. So I think the Usos will defeat the Brawling Brutes. And hopefully, in a perfect world, if you look way ahead to the Usos, when are they going to drop the belts? I still think that it's got to be like a Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn type of situation there. But we've also heard the reports that whatever they were planning with Sami and the Bloodline has kind of been stalled because it's getting so over and it's white hot. So any of their immediate plans might be being postponed. But if this thing were to last all the way, let's say until WrestleMania, think about that. The Usos versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn would be pretty funny. And I would love as well to see some sort of a scenario like we saw in 1999 after Mankind got booted out by Mr. McMahon, in 1998 at Survivor Series when The Rock won the title. kicking out Mick Foley, breaking his heart. He thought he was in good with his dad, Vince McMahon, only to be cast aside in favor of The Rock. It broke Mankind's heart, and he became a babyface after that. And then on that January 4th Raw, he beat The Rock for the title with help from Stone Cold, with Vince McMahon flipping out at the end of the match. You recreate that whole situation again. Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, early January SmackDown. Kevin Owens comes down to the ring, hits Roman Reigns in the face with a chair. Sami Zayn covers him, gets the win. Kevin Owens flips off Paul Heyman as he's flipping off in the entranceway. You could take that entire January 4th Mankind and Rock match and plug it in to Sami Zayn and the Bloodline and just use Owens in place of Austin and Heyman in place of McMahon. It would work. It would be great. So who knows how the storyline is going to progress with Sami and the Bloodline, because it sounds like WWE is just going to wait and see how it goes, because things are so over, that you have to change your plans sometimes. So that's good news. We'll see how all that ends up, but I think it's impossible to predict because it's just going to be based on the fans' reaction and how everybody still continues to take to this whole angle, which right now we're all loving that. But in terms of the Usos' current tag team title run, it is in no danger. On Saturday, they will retain over the Brawling Brutes. Bianca Belair defending the Raw Women's title against Bayley in a last woman standing match. Now, I had said at the previous match between these two, in a ladder match, that, oh, look, we're in a situation where Bianca can lose the title without being pinned. But she won and retained the title anyway. So now we're doing it again. Now it's a last woman standing match. And again, Bianca is in a situation here where technically she could lose the title without being pinned. But I think if they were going to do that, they just would have done it at the last pay-per-view or whatnot. So I think based on Bayley's return, Damage Control I don't dislike by any means, but they haven't been maybe as promising as fans were hoping they would be. And there's some issues creatively with Damage Control. And I just don't think they're clicking. And Bayley even feels like she's been missing something since she came back. So factoring all that in, and of course, Bianca is your very, very strong champion right now who's just on a roll. I am not having her drop this belt until WrestleMania. And maybe you do Becky and Bianca again. I don't know what you do. Bianca and Charlotte also seems like it could be a good possibility for WrestleMania. And if you can hold it off that long, because they are on the same brand, Bianca and Rhea Ripley. Because I think Judgment Day is really being used as a tool to get Ripley over huge. I think Ripley should be women's champion on either brand very, very soon as this badass new gimmick that she has. And taking the belt from Bianca might be great. I would also like to see Charlotte and Rhea Ripley face each other and just redo WrestleMania 37, that whole scenario. I was really looking forward to that match. Rhea was on such a roll, closing out her run in NXT there. And then, of course, the pandemic and all that happened. And, and Rhea's kind of basically just been floundering ever since, even though she's still very good. So I would love to see Ripley and Charlotte, with Ripley putting her down this time for good, would be amazing. But Charlotte is probably going to be going to SmackDown to work with Ronda, and it might be hard to get those two together. But I would go Bianca versus Ripley, or Ripley versus Charlotte, meaning like maybe Ripley takes the belt off of Bianca prior to WrestleMania, and then faces Charlotte, or maybe Charlotte takes the belt off of Bianca, which could happen. You do Charlotte and Bianca at the Rumble or something. Charlotte wins the belt. Rhea wins the Rumble. I would do that. I would have Rhea Ripley win the Rumble this year. That's who I would have win it. And then maybe Ripley can then challenge Charlotte, just like Charlotte challenged her for the NXT title at WrestleMania. This time it can be Ripley doing the challenging to Charlotte, but then that leaves poor Bianca out in the cold, and I don't want to see that either. I think she's good enough to hold on to the belt until WrestleMania. So there's a lot of things you could do with at least the Raw Women's title, but having those women involved in one of those WrestleMania matches, I think, is best. So because of that, I just don't see how you would have Bianca Belair lose here. It's going to be a bad night for Damage Control. I feel like Dakota and Io are going to lose their rematch, and then you're also going to have Bayley lose as well. I feel like I could have one of these wrong. You could have Dakota and Io regain those tag team championships. You could actually do that if you wanted to. It would be weird, but at least it would put a title change on the show, because we're not going to see any other ones. And maybe that would explain why WWE did the title change on Raw, so they could do a title change at the pay-per-view. I don't know. I have no idea, but I don't see I don't see I don't see Bayley walking out with the title. I don't want her to. So I'm going to pick Bianca, and I'm pretty confident in that, but that does mean that it's going to be a bad day for Damage Control. And I'm not sure if they're going to have all three of those ladies lose all their matches. I don't know if that's how they're going to book it. I don't know. So we will find out. Bianca, I believe, will retain, and I hope she retains the Raw Women's title over Bayley. Brock Lesnar taking on Bobby Lashley. Brock's lost a lot this year. He lost to Lashley, didn't he? At the, what was that, the Royal Rumble or whatever it was? And then he lost to Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. And then he lost to Roman Reigns again at SummerSlam. Is Brock going to come in and just take another loss here? 4 big pay-per-view losses, 2 to Lashley, 2 to Roman in 2022? Don't see it happening. And that also explains why Lashley got rid of the U.S. title, because there's no reason for Brock to win the U.S. title. So this would either have to be a non-title match, or Lashley would have to go over to retain the title. So once they took the title off of Lashley, you could tell that's where this was going. And I believe Brock Lesnar will beat Bobby Lashley in this rematch. And then, of course, the main event, Roman Reigns defending the undisputed WWE and Universal title against Logan Paul. Roman Reigns will win this match. I was going to try to say something clever, but I just can't. Logan Paul, WWE, a lot of fans are like, I know that Logan Paul's not going to win, but good mic work. What if? What if? Okay, what if? If Logan Paul wins the WWE title, I will change my name to Fart Testicle. I will. It's not going to happen. I can't see it happening. However, I do think this is going to be a pretty fun match. I think Logan Paul, they have to book it in a way to where you don't do a squash, because if you do a squash, then you just rob. Sometimes a squash is good, but I kind of want to see, I want Logan Paul to have this match. This is a big stage, big setting, pay-per-view main event, international stage like this. After his brother's been making all sorts of headlines. I believe Jake Paul will probably be there as well to maybe offset the bloodline. There's been some rumors that Jake, since he won his match or his fight with Anderson Silva, that he will be showing up and backing up Logan Paul. I can see that. Like we said earlier, there isn't going to be Sami Zayn on the show. At least I don't think, unless something has changed with his situation and him going over to Saudi Arabia, but I don't think it has. So Sami's not going to be there, but the rest of the bloodline will. And I think having Jake Paul there to try to combat that is something they probably will do, and I expect to see him there. But in the end, I think Roman Reigns has to put down Logan and put him down emphatically. Logan can have some offense. I can definitely see a deal where Roman's kind of pummeling him, and, maybe there's a distraction and he's able to nut shot or low blow Roman, and, Logan then starts making a comeback, does a few of his moves, hits Roman with some frog splashes, and just impresses the crowd in general. But then in the end, Roman overcomes the flurry of offense, and the comeback by Logan Paul puts him down with a spear or a Superman punch or whatever. Not sure if they're going to do the finisher kick out here thing with Logan Paul. I wouldn't. I don't really want Logan Paul kicking out of spears and shit, but he's probably going to kick out of something that's going to tell the story of the tribal chief giving him his respect type of thing. Like if Logan kicks out of something, Roman covers him. He knows it in his head that it's going to be a 3 count, and then Logan kicks out, and then Roman's like, holy shit, fucking kid can fight. And just pick him up, boom, one more time, put him down, and then pin him. And I always say, I'm going to do the Undertaker Heidenreich thing, where after he beats him, he kind of looks down at him like, damn, he took me to the limit, or damn, he did better than I thought he was going to do. And maybe Roman gives Logan a little bit of a rub that way. You do have to remember, Roman is the heel here and Logan is the face. That's what they're trying to make you think anyway, even though I think most of the fans at home and possibly in the crowd too are going to be reacting the opposite way. But I could also see Roman Reigns maybe giving Logan Paul just a little bit of an acknowledgement after the match. Something very minor, just a little bit of a fist bump and he walks away, that type of thing. Like, good job, kid. Of course, you're not as good as the tribal chief, but, to your credit, you're better than I thought you were going to be. So maybe we'll see that. Again, I don't need a 25-minute match here between these guys. I don't need Logan Paul taking Roman to the limit, but we still need to have a good match. It's got to be a balance between a squash and actually a competitive match, but not crossing the line into being too competitive is my only concern. But in the end, Roman Reigns has got to retain his title. I cannot imagine after 2 years of being the champion, he loses to a YouTuber. That would just not be right. I think Roman will be your champion going into WrestleMania next year, unless, like I said, they figure some way to de-unify or ununify these belts. He's probably just going to coast right into WrestleMania next year to wrestle God knows who. But in terms of Saturday, I can't see him losing it to Logan Paul. So Roman goes over in that. Just to recap, Judgment Day over OC, Strowman over Omos, McIntyre over Cross, Alexa and Asuka to retain the tags over Dakota and Io, Usos to retain the tags over the Brawling Brutes, Bianca to retain the Raw Women's title over Bayley in the last woman standing match, Brock over Lashley, and Roman over Logan Paul. Now, there you go. So that is 1, 2, 3, I guess 4. I don't even know if some of these are heels or baby faces. Is Brock a heel or a face? I guess he's a heel. I'm going to go Roman, Brock, Usos, and Judgment Day is our heels. So 4 and 4. Strowman, Drew, Alexa, Asuka, and Bianca are kind of your baby faces right now. So pretty even booking there of heels and baby faces going over. We will see what happens on Saturday, and that is the end of my notes. So let's just cruise over here to the chat, see if there's anything else you guys want to talk about. 2 or 3 more super chats that I have to answer, and then I am going to get out of here. Let me start with Spectra. Great to see you. Thank you for being here again, and thanks for another $5. Hey, Greg, just saw your streaming. Driving 2 hours each way to pick up a suit for a wedding this weekend. So glad I can listen for a little bit. Dude, drive safely. Didn't you who was it chimed in yesterday saying they had to take care of their wife and baby? If you guys have got other stuff to do, make sure you do that. But I definitely appreciate you chiming in from your automobile. 10 and 2. Don't be super chatting with your 10 o'clock hand. I'm serious. Watch the road. Have a good trip. Have fun at the wedding, and I'm sure you're going to be looking fly in that suit. Thanks, as always, Spectra, for that. Tomas Aridia, thank you for the $5 as well. CM Punk never deserved to be an AEW World Champion. He had no right to pin everyone in AEW. Good riddance. CM Punk never deserved to be AEW World Champion. Maybe personally deserved, yes, but in terms of name value, if I'm in Tony Khan's seat at the time, I'm putting the belt on Punk too. He brings in too much buzz and too much value at the time, but what a difference a year makes. And now my opinions are aligning a little bit more with yours, Tomas, maybe just not as hardcore. Spectra, appreciate 2 more from you. Who the biggest miss as a main eventer? Lex Luger? The biggest miss. Well, I don't know. Lex Luger did have some hits as a main eventer in WCW, never really achieved that in WWE. But biggest miss as a main eventer, I got to give that some thought, Spectre. If you guys have any ideas, let me know, or suggestions. Oh, I didn't mention Bray Wyatt. Yeah, it looks like Seth Rollins is not booked for this. I really hope he doesn't have to make the trip. Hopefully anybody booked for this shit doesn't have to go. And I did not mention Bray Wyatt. He is also advertised for Crown Jewel. Bray Wyatt will show his magic or grace us with his presence and his magic or whatever at Crown Jewel. We are also going to hear from him, so I assume it's probably going to be another promo and maybe some more video wall shit with Uncle Howdy. Maybe we might actually get some physicality in a ring if he gets physical with somebody. I don't know what kind of segment they're going to have planned for the Saudi Arabia crowd, but we will find out. He will be there as well. Should have mentioned that earlier on. Scarlett has to be covered up for the first time in her life. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Saudi Arabia has gone too far. I agree with all of you guys. But anyway, I got to head out of here because I got to go to work now for a couple of hours. It is cold and windy in San Diego today. It is 61 degrees, and that's cold for here. It's going to drop dramatically when the sun goes down. And then on Saturday, we all gain an hour, by the way. So we're going to fall back Saturday night, and daylight savings time ends. We go back to standard time, which means it's going to be getting dark after lunch. Isn't that nice? So we are now into the fall and winter months, and those are always fun here on the channel. Well, you guys have a great rest of your Thursday evening and afternoon, depending on where you live and what you're doing. Don't forget to join us again this Saturday, about an hour after Crown Jewel goes off the air. We will be up here to review it. And then on Sunday, Survivor Series 1998 watch along. It's going to be a hoot. Appreciate you being here this afternoon. Thanks for joining me, and I will catch